So let's talk about one really incredible day in the Philippines, December 16th, 2025. What makes this day so fascinating is how it perfectly captures a nation living in two different worlds at once. On one hand, the joy of the holiday season, and on the other, two really serious national security threats. It's a wild contrast, and we're going to unpack it all.
So you have to ask, right? How does a whole country manage to celebrate its biggest, most important holiday while being on high alert? And this isn't just some abstract question for the government. It's a tension you could feel everywhere, from government buildings to the crowded city streets.
I mean, just look at this. On one side, you've got the Christmas spirit in full swing. The P-pop group Binny is creating holiday magic. People are getting free train rides. But at the exact same time, a much darker story is playing out. There's a huge international terror investigation, a tense standoff at sea, and police are deployed everywhere. Okay, so first up, let's dive into that international security threat that really put the nation on edge. This is a pretty complicated story that has a direct link to a tragic attack that happened in Australia. And this is where it gets really serious. The National Security Council confirmed it. Suspects in that deadly IS-inspired attack at Bondi Beach had actually visited the Philippines before carrying it out. You can imagine that piece of news kicked off a massive, high-stakes investigation. And the response? It was immediate and it was huge. This wasn't just a local issue, not by a long shot. You've got the National Security Council, the National Police, and the Bureau of Immigration all working super closely with their international partners, especially with the authorities in Australia. That tells you just how seriously everyone was taking this. And you'd think that would be enough for one day, right? Nope. At the very same time, another crisis was blowing up. This time, it was out at sea, where a long-running dispute in the West Philippine Sea just flared up, creating a really tense situation. I mean, listen to this. The Department of Foreign Affairs did not hold back at all. They used some incredibly strong words, calling the actions they witnessed dangerous and inhumane. So you know this wasn't just your typical diplomatic back and forth. Things had clearly escalated. So here's the breakdown of what happened out at sea. The Philippines says its fishermen were just doing their jobs, operating in their own waters. But then they were confronted by the Chinese Coast Guard. The incident allegedly even led to some Filipinos getting hurt, which prompted the DFA to file an official diplomatic protest. Okay, so with these two massive threats coming from the outside, what was happening back home? How did the government try to make sure everyone stayed safe during what is easily the busiest time of the entire year? Well, the response was, in a word, massive. We're talking about the Philippine National Police deploying over 100,000 officers all across the country. That's a huge number. It sent a very clear message to everyone. Even though it's the holidays, the nation is on high alert. But life doesn't just stop for these big crises. To really get what this day felt like, you have to look at how all this was happening right alongside the normal, everyday lives of millions of Filipinos. And then there's the stuff that hits you right in the wallet. On top of everything else, there was a lot of worry about a potential 20% tariff hike on imported rice. For a lot of families, that's a huge deal, adding another layer of stress about the cost of a basic necessity. But hey, it wasn't all doom and gloom. There was some genuinely good news, especially if you were commuting in the capital. The Libreng Sakay program was in full swing, giving people free train rides, a really nice bit of holiday cheer in the middle of all the traffic and chaos. And you really can't talk about this day without mentioning the absolute cultural domination of P-pop superstars Beanie. Seriously, their holiday events and social media campaigns were everywhere. It was this vibrant, happy soundtrack playing in the background. A really welcome contrast to all the serious news. So, what's the big picture here? What does this single day really tell us? Well, it paints a portrait of a nation under some intense pressure, a country having to deal with major international crises while also trying to hold on to the joy and traditions of its most important season. It really is an incredible show of resilience. And all of this leaves us with a final, really big question, one that goes way beyond just the Philippines. In this increasingly complicated world we all live in, how do any of us find that delicate balance between celebrating life and staying vigilant against the threats that always seem to be out there?